The tall, blue-skinned alien commander looked down at Jack Smith with undisguised contempt. At 5 feet 8 inches, Jack was barely half the height of the average Guardian Space Force soldier. His slim build and gentle demeanor made him appear even less impressive to the warrior race that now controlled Earth's military training program. "This is what your species sends us?" The commander's translator crackled with disdain. "We asked for warriors, not children." Jack stood straight, keeping his face neutral despite the burning shame in his chest. He had dreamed of joining the Interstellar Defense Force since aliens first contacted Earth 5 years ago. Now, at age 22, he had finally passed the basic qualification tests, barely. The testing room buzzed with clicking sounds as the other alien officers discussed him in their native tongue. Their massive frames, covered in ceremonial armor, made the standard military facility feel cramped. Jack caught fragments of their conversation through his basic translator: unsuitable, waste of resources, typical human weakness. But Jack knew something they didn't. While the aliens valued raw strength and intimidating size, humans had developed combat styles that turned those very advantages against larger opponents. His small frame concealed years of martial arts training, not that he would reveal that yet. "I accept any challenge you wish to give me," Jack said quietly. "I only ask for the chance to prove myself." The commander's 4 eyes narrowed. "Very well, human. You will begin basic training tomorrow at dawn. When you fail, and you will return to your mundane civilian life and never attempt to join our ranks again." Jack simply nodded, already planning how to survive what would undoubtedly be the hardest challenge of his life. The aliens might see him as weak now, but he would show them that human determination could overcome any physical disadvantage. As he left the testing facility that evening, Jack looked up at the alien ships hovering in Earth's atmosphere, massive, gleaming symbols of technological superiority. Soon they would learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their muscles or their size, but in their unwavering spirit and ability to adapt. He had just taken the first step toward changing everything. Dawn broke over the alien training facility, casting long shadows across the massive training grounds. Jack arrived 15 minutes early, his heart pounding but his face showing nothing. He was the only human among 30 alien recruits, all of them at least twice his size. The morning started with what the aliens called a light warm-up. Jack's muscles screamed as he lifted weights designed for beings 3 times his strength. The metallic training room echoed with the sound of heavy breathing and clanking equipment. While the alien recruits easily handled their exercises, Jack struggled with every rep. "Look at the tiny one of." The alien recruits rumbled in their language, forgetting Jack's translator could pick up their words. "He cannot even lift the children's weights." The instructor, a battle-scarred veteran named Commander Rex, seemed to take particular pleasure in pushing Jack to his limits. "Faster, human." On the battlefield, hesitation means death. But Jack had a secret weapon: human endurance. While the aliens were stronger, their bodies weren't built for extended physical activity. 3 hours into the training, Jack noticed their movements becoming slower, their breathing more labored. He kept going, drawing on years of marathon training. The breaking point came during the afternoon combat simulation. The recruits were paired off for sparring matches, and naturally, Jack was matched against one of the largest aliens, a towering warrior named Grok. "Try not to break the human," Commander Rex said, his tone making it clear he wouldn't mind if Grok did exactly that. The match began, and Grok charged forward like a freight train. Jack waited until the last possible moment before moving, not away, but toward his opponent. Years of Aikido training kicked in as he used Grok's momentum against him, sending the massive alien tumbling across the training mat. The room fell silent. Grok got up, his face flushing a deep purple with rage and embarrassment. This time he attacked more cautiously, but Jack was ready. He ducked under a powerful swing and swept Grok's legs out from under him, using the alien's weight against him once again. "Enough." Commander Rex's voice boomed across the training room. His 4 eyes studied Jack with newfound interest. It seems our human recruit has been hiding some skills. Jack stood at attention, his body aching but his spirit unbroken. Sir, on Earth we learn that true strength isn't just about size or power. It's about using what you have effectively. The commander walked around Jack slowly, reassessing him. Perhaps there is something to learn from your species after all. But do not think this makes your training any easier, human. Tomorrow will be twice as challenging. As Jack left the training facility that evening, he noticed the other recruits looking at him differently. The mockery was gone, replaced by curiosity and, in some cases, respect. He had survived day 1, but this was just the beginning. Back in his quarters, Jack carefully treated his bruises and stretched his sore muscles. On his tablet, he pulled up more combat techniques specifically designed for fighting larger opponents. If the aliens thought today was surprising, they hadn't seen anything yet. Tomorrow would be harder, but Jack allowed himself a small smile. He had proven that humans weren't as weak as they seemed, and this was just the first step in changing the aliens' perception of Earth's defenders. Word spread quickly through the alien training facility about the small human who had bested one of their strongest recruits. As Jack entered the training grounds for his second day, he could feel the atmosphere had changed. The mockery had been replaced by something more dangerous, wounded pride. Commander Rex stood before the assembled recruits, his armor gleaming in the morning light. Today, we test your survival skills. The battlefield cares nothing for your size or strength if you cannot endure its challenges. The commander led them to a massive environmental simulator, a technological marvel that could recreate any planetary condition. You will experience the harsh environments of the 5 deadliest planets in our alliance. Those who cannot adapt will fail. Jack's heart sank as the first simulation began. The chamber filled with thick, purple gas, and gravity increased to 3 times Earth's normal level. Around him, the alien recruits moved with practiced ease, they had trained for this their entire lives. But humans had something the aliens didn't expect, unprecedented adaptability. While the others relied on their natural strength, Jack analyzed each situation, finding creative solutions. In the crushing gravity, he crawled instead of walked, conserving energy. In the freezing simulation, he built a shelter using techniques learned from Earth's Arctic explorers. Hours passed, and the challenges grew more intense. The atmosphere became acidic, then superheated, then nearly vacuum. Through it all, Jack refused to quit, even as several alien recruits were forced to withdraw. During a brief rest period, Grok approached Jack. The massive alien's pride was still bruised from yesterday's defeat. You may have clever tricks, human, but you cannot fool nature. These conditions would kill your entire species. Jack wiped sweat from his forehead. Maybe. But humans have something you haven't considered, we've spent our entire history adapting to impossible situations. It's what we do best. The final challenge combined all previous elements into a nightmarish obstacle course. As they began, Jack noticed something odd. The alien recruits, for all their strength, were following a standard approach, the same techniques they'd been taught their entire lives. Jack took a different path. Where they tried to power through barriers, he found ways around them. When toxic gas filled a chamber, he used his smaller size to stay close to the ground where the air was clearer. Each challenge became a puzzle to solve rather than a test of brute force. Commander Rex watched from his observation post, his 4 eyes narrowing as Jack completed each section. The human wasn't just surviving, he was adapting strategies that had never been considered in their training protocols. Near the end of the day, the commander gathered everyone. Today has revealed interesting results. Some of you relied on strength and failed. Others. His eyes fixed on Jack, demonstrated that survival requires more than physical power. But not everyone was impressed. A group of alien recruits huddled together, their expressions dark. Jack could hear fragments of their conversation through his translator, making us look weak, cannot allow, teach the human a lesson. Back in his quarters that evening, Jack reviewed the day's lessons while treating new bruises. His muscles ached, but his mind was sharp. He had proven humans could survive the harshest conditions the aliens could create, but he knew tomorrow would bring new challenges. On his tablet, he noticed a message from Earth's military command: "Keep pushing. Your performance is changing minds up here. Don't let them break you." Jack smiled grimly. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore, he was showing the entire alien alliance that humans deserved respect. But as he heard heavy footsteps passing by his door and angry whispers in alien languages, he knew some lessons would be learned the hard way. Jack knew something was wrong the moment he entered the training facility's corridor before dawn. The usually bright hallways were dimly lit, and the security cameras had been deactivated. His combat instincts, honed by years of training, screamed danger. He wasn't surprised when 5 massive shapes emerged from the shadows. Grok led the group, his alien features twisted with anger. "Time to learn your place, human. No instructors here to save you now." "I don't want trouble," Jack said calmly, shifting his stance slightly. "We're all here to become better warriors." "Better warriors?" another alien sneered. "You make us look weak with your tricks. The Guardian Space Force is about power, not clever games." They moved to surround him, their huge frames blocking any escape route. Jack noticed they had timed their ambush perfectly. It was too early for other recruits or instructors to arrive, and the corridor's security systems were conveniently malfunctioning. But Jack had been expecting something like this. Humans had millennia of experience dealing with stronger opponents, and he had spent his entire life preparing for such moments. As Grok threw the first punch, Jack was already moving. The narrow corridor, which should have been a disadvantage for the smaller human, became his ally. The aliens couldn't surround him properly in the confined space, and their size worked against them as they got in each other's way. Jack ducked under a swing that would have taken his head off, letting the alien's fist crash into the wall instead. He didn't try to block their powerful strikes, that would be suicide. Instead, he redirected their momentum, used their own strength against them, and struck at vulnerable points. One alien went down after Jack swept his legs. Another doubled over when Jack targeted a nerve cluster that his studies had revealed was sensitive in their species. But he knew he couldn't keep this up forever. One solid hit from these giants would end the fight. The aliens grew increasingly frustrated as their prey refused to be caught. "Stand still and fight like a warrior," Grok roared, his patience snapping. "This is how humans fight," Jack replied, his breathing controlled despite the intense exertion. "We adapt. We survive. We overcome." The fight reached its climax when 2 aliens charged him simultaneously. Instead of dodging, Jack stepped forward, using a complex Aikido move that sent both massive warriors crashing into each other. The impact echoed through the corridor. But Grok had been waiting for this moment. As Jack completed his move, the alien leader struck from behind with devastating force. Jack managed to roll with the blow, but still felt ribs crack as he slammed into the wall. Through the pain, Jack saw Grok approaching for the finishing blow. Time seemed to slow as his training kicked in. He remembered his instructor's words: "When everything seems lost, change the rules of engagement." As Grok's fist descended, Jack did something no alien would expect. He moved toward the attack. He slipped inside Grok's guard, used the alien's own arm as a lever, and executed a perfect throw that sent the massive warrior flying over his shoulder. The impact when Grok hit the ground was tremendous. For a moment, nothing moved in the corridor. The remaining aliens stared in disbelief at their leader sprawled on the floor. "What is happening here?" Commander Rex's voice boomed through the corridor. The instructor's massive frame filled the entrance, his 4 eyes taking in the scene. Jack stood straight despite his injuries, faced the commander, and said simply, "A difference of opinion about training methods, sir. I believe it's resolved now." The commander looked at the groaning aliens, then back at Jack. His expression was unreadable, but there was something new in his voice when he spoke. "Report to medical, then return for today's training. All of you." He paused, then added, "Perhaps there is more to learn from Earth's combat methods than we realized." News of the corridor fight spread through the training facility like wildfire. As Jack sat in the medical bay, letting the advanced alien healing technology repair his cracked ribs, he could hear the buzz of conversations in the hallway. The story grew with each telling, one small human defeating 5 elite warrior race recruits. The medical officer, an alien female named Dr. Vix, shook her head as she examined his injuries. "Your species is remarkably resilient. These injuries would keep most recruits in bed for days, yet you insist on returning to training immediately." "Humans have always been good at pushing through pain," Jack replied, wincing as the healing beam knitted his bones back together. "We've had lots of practice." When Jack returned to the training grounds, something had changed. The alien recruits who had previously ignored or mocked him now watched his movements with careful attention. Even those who hadn't participated in the ambush seemed to be re-evaluating their assumptions about human capabilities. Commander Rex called everyone to attention. "Today's lesson will be different," he announced, his voice echoing across the training yard. "We will study adaptive combat techniques. Recruit Smith, step forward." Jack's heart raced as he moved to the front of the group. Was this punishment for the fight? But the commander's next words surprised everyone. "You will demonstrate how your species turns apparent weaknesses into strengths. Show us how humans fight." For the next hour, Jack explained and demonstrated the principles of human martial arts. He showed how leverage could overcome strength, how momentum could be redirected, and how smaller fighters could use their speed and agility to their advantage. To everyone's surprise, Grok stepped forward first to volunteer as Jack's training partner. His face showed no anger from their earlier fight, only intense concentration as Jack taught him how to use an opponent's weight against them. "Your techniques," Grok said during a break, his voice carrying a new note of respect, "they are not just about fighting. They are about thinking differently. That's what humans do best," Jack explained. "We've spent our history adapting to challenges and finding new ways to solve problems. Every limitation forced us to become more creative." Commander Rex watched the training with growing interest. During the afternoon session, he made an unprecedented announcement: "The Guardian Space Force has always valued strength above all. Perhaps, this was a limited view. True combat readiness requires both power and adaptability." The day's training ended with paired exercises, aliens and humans working together to combine their different fighting styles. Jack noticed that the aliens were starting to incorporate human techniques into their own combat methods, creating something entirely new. Later that evening, Jack received a message from Earth Command: "Your progress is causing waves. The Alien High Command is reviewing their entire training protocol. Keep going." But not everyone was happy about these changes. As Jack headed back to his quarters, he overheard 2 senior alien officers talking in hushed tones. "This is dangerous," one growled. "If we admit humans have valuable combat techniques, the other races might question our position as the supreme warriors of the Alliance." "The High Command is already interested," the other replied. "They're sending an observer to evaluate the humans' training methods." Jack pretended not to hear as he walked past, but his mind was racing. An observer from High Command meant higher stakes, and likely greater challenges ahead. If he could prove human methods worked at that level, it might change not just the training program, but the entire power structure of the Alien Alliance. In his quarters, Jack began preparing for the next day. He knew he wasn't just representing himself anymore, he was representing Earth's potential contribution to the Alliance. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time, he felt like he was truly making a difference. The arrival of High Commander Dax sent waves of tension through the training facility. Standing nearly 12 feet tall, with battle scars crossing his blue-tinted armor, he represented the pinnacle of alien warrior culture. His presence made even Commander Rex look small in comparison. Jack stood at attention with the other recruits as the High Commander inspected them. When those ancient, battle-hardened eyes fell on him, Jack felt like he was being dissected. So, Dax's voice rumbled like distant thunder, "This is the human who presumes to change our combat doctrine. Show me these techniques that have caused such discussion among our ranks." The training yard fell silent as Jack stepped forward. This wasn't just about him anymore, Earth's future role in the Alliance could depend on what happened next. "Sir," Jack said, keeping his voice steady, "would you allow me to demonstrate with one of your elite guards?" The High Commander's expression might have been amusement or contempt, it was hard to tell with alien features. He gestured to one of his personal guards, a warrior even larger than Grok. As the guard took position, Jack noticed something interesting. The alien's stance was perfect by their standards, which meant it was predictable. Weeks of training with the recruits had taught Jack exactly how their warrior culture approached combat. The demonstration began, and Jack immediately put his knowledge to use. He didn't try to match the guard's strength or speed. Instead, he moved in unexpected ways, used angles the aliens never considered, and turned their standard combat responses against them. The first time Jack threw the massive guard to the ground, a murmur ran through the watching crowd. The second time, using a different technique, High Commander Dax leaned forward with interest. By the third demonstration, using yet another method, the ancient warrior's expression had changed completely. "Enough," Dax commanded. But instead of dismissing Jack, he turned to Commander Rex. "Your reports were accurate. The human's methods are unorthodox, but effective." He faced Jack again. "But anyone can demonstrate in a controlled setting. Real combat is different." "If I may, sir," Jack said, an idea forming, "I propose a test. Let me face 3 of your best warriors, not in sequence, but simultaneously. If I fail, we forget about integrating human techniques. If I succeed, you consider implementing them across all training programs." The High Commander's 4 eyes widened slightly, the first real surprise he'd shown. "You would risk everything on a single challenge? Against 3 elite warriors?" Jack nodded. "That's another human trait, sir. We believe in taking calculated risks when the potential reward is worth it." A deep, rumbling sound emerged from the High Commander. It took Jack a moment to realize it was laughter. "Very well, human. Tomorrow at dawn, you will face 3 of my chosen warriors. The entire command staff will observe." His voice hardened. "Do not make me regret this opportunity." That evening, as Jack prepared for the biggest challenge of his life, he received visitors. Grok and several other recruits entered his quarters. "We came to help you prepare," Grok said. "We have trained with the elite warriors before. We know their patterns, their preferences in combat." Jack looked at the aliens who had once been his adversaries, now offering to help him succeed. "Thank you," he said simply. They spent hours analyzing fighting styles and developing strategies. Jack learned that elite warriors had certain habits, ingrained responses that could be used against them. By the time his visitors left, he had a clear plan for tomorrow's challenge. In his quarters, Jack received one final message from Earth Command: "Whatever happens tomorrow, you've already changed their perspective on humanity. But we believe you can do more than that, you can change their entire understanding of what makes a warrior great." Jack set his alarm for well before dawn. Tomorrow would determine not just his future, but potentially the future relationship between humans and the Guardian Space Force. He'd been training for this moment his entire life, even if he hadn't known it. Dawn broke over the training facility as hundreds of alien warriors gathered to watch the challenge. The arena, normally used for group exercises, had been cleared for the confrontation. High Commander Dax sat on an elevated platform, surrounded by senior officers from across the Alliance. Jack stood in the center, looking small but composed as his three opponents entered. They were the elite of the elite, warriors who had won countless battles across the galaxy. Each one carried ceremonial armor marking their legendary status. This challenge will determine if human combat methods have a place in our training, High Commander Dax announced. Begin. The three warriors moved with incredible speed, spreading out to surround Jack. Their coordination was perfect, they had trained together for years. But Jack had prepared for this, and he immediately put his plan into action. Instead of backing away, he charged straight at the nearest warrior. It was the last thing they expected, no one had ever willingly closed distance with an elite guard. The warrior's surprise gave Jack the split second he needed to slide past his defense and use his own momentum to throw him into the path of the second attacker. The crowd gasped as the two massive aliens collided. But Jack had no time to celebrate, the third warrior was already on him. He ducked under a devastating strike that would have ended the fight instantly, rolling across the ground and coming up behind a training obstacle. "Stop hiding, human," one warrior bellowed. "Face us with honor." "I am," Jack called back, his voice clear and confident. "I'm fighting exactly as humans have always fought, using everything available to overcome stronger opponents." He proved his point by using the obstacle as a launching pad, vaulting over it to deliver a precise strike to a nerve cluster on the nearest warrior's neck. The alien's arm went temporarily numb, his weapon clattering to the ground. The fight continued, becoming a dance of speed versus power, technique versus strength. Jack never stayed still, never met force with force. He turned the warriors' attacks against each other, used their size to his advantage, and slowly but surely began to wear them down. But he couldn't keep it up forever. 15 minutes into the fight, exhaustion began to set in. One of the warriors landed a glancing blow that sent Jack spinning. The crowd tensed, expecting the end. Instead, Jack turned the spin into a new attack, using the momentum to sweep another warrior's legs out from under him. As that warrior fell, Jack used his back as a springboard to launch a flying strike at the third opponent. The elite warriors had never faced anything like this. Their training taught them to overwhelm with power, but they couldn't overwhelm what they couldn't hit. Their perfect coordination began to break down as frustration set in. That was when Jack made his final move. He had noticed that elite warriors were trained to protect each other, it was ingrained in their combat doctrine. When one warrior stumbled, another would always move to guard them. Jack used this predictability against them. In a sequence of moves that happened almost too fast to follow, he caused one warrior to trip, knew exactly where the second would move to protect him, and used that warrior's position to throw the third. In a matter of seconds, all three elite warriors were on the ground. The arena fell completely silent. Jack stood in the center, breathing hard but still ready to fight. The three warriors got to their feet, but instead of attacking again, they did something unprecedented, they bowed to him. High Commander Dax rose from his seat, his expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's shock, he too bowed slightly to Jack. "We have witnessed something extraordinary today," the High Commander announced. "This human has proven that true combat mastery comes not from strength alone, but from adaptation, intelligence, and understanding. From this day forward, human combat techniques will be incorporated into all Guardian Space Force training." As the crowd erupted in cheers, Jack saw Grok and his fellow recruits beaming with pride. Commander Rex nodded in approval. Earth Command had just sent a one-word message to his tablet, "Perfect." The aliens had laughed at the weak human once. Now they would learn from him. It wasn't just a victory for Jack, it was a victory for all of humanity, proving that they deserved their place among the stars.